Welcome to my channel, Sci-Fi Vault. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Silent Watchers, the hidden mountain deep inside Mount Cheyenne, 5 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. Commander Sarah Chen walked through corridors that officially did not exist. The facility known as Project Sentinel had been operating in complete secrecy for over 30 years. The world above knew nothing of the massive underground complex that housed Earth's most advanced defensive systems. Sarah's footsteps echoed against the metal walls as she made her way to the main control center. She had been running this facility for 8 years, ever since the previous commander retired under mysterious circumstances. What most people didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this day since the 1970s, when the first strange signals were detected coming from beyond the solar system. The control room was a marvel of human engineering. Dozens of screens showed data streams from satellites, ground stations, and deep space monitoring equipment scattered across the globe. The technology looked almost primitive compared to what people saw in movies, but Sarah knew better. Sometimes the most effective weapons were the ones that looked harmless. Dr. Marcus Webb sat at his usual station, studying readings from the outer solar system. The scientist had devoted his entire career to understanding alien technology, even though most of his colleagues thought he was chasing fantasies. His wild gray hair and thick glasses made him look like a typical absent-minded professor. But his mind was sharper than any computer. "Commander, we have a problem," Marcus said, without looking up from his screens. "The deep space monitors are picking up something unusual near Jupiter's orbit." Sarah moved to look over his shoulder. The display showed a faint energy signature that pulsed with regular intervals, was barely visible against the background radiation of space, but it was definitely artificial. "How long has it been there?" she asked. "That's the disturbing part," Marcus replied, adjusting his readings. "I've been going through our archive data for the past week. The signature's been present for at least 50 years, but it's been so faint that our computers classified it as background noise." Captain Torres, the facility's chief military strategist, joined them at the monitoring station. The former Air Force pilot had seen combat in 3 different wars before being recruited into Project Sentinel. His experience with aerial combat had proven invaluable in developing Earth's orbital defense strategies. 50 years? Torres asked, his voice filled with concern. "That means whatever is out there has been watching us since before we had satellites." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The implications were staggering. While humanity had been focused on earthly conflicts and technological development, something had been observing them from the darkness of space. The question was whether these watchers were friendly or hostile. "Run a full analysis," Sarah ordered. "I want to know everything about that signal, power levels, transmission patterns, possible origin points, and check all our other monitoring stations. If there's one watcher, there might be more." The next 48 hours. The team at Project Sentinel made discoveries that changed everything they thought they knew about Earth's place in the universe. The scanning equipment revealed not one, but 17 different artificial signatures scattered throughout the solar system. Some were positioned near the major planets, others drifted in the asteroid belt, and a few lingered just beyond Pluto's orbit. Dr. Webb worked tirelessly to decode the signals. His expertise in theoretical physics and computer systems proved essential as he began to understand the alien technology. The Watchers were using a form of quantum communication that allowed them to transmit information instantly across vast distances. "It's remarkable," Webb explained to Sarah and Torres during their daily briefing. "Their technology is definitely advanced, but it's not as far beyond ours as we might have expected. In some ways, they seem to have taken a completely different approach to space technology." Torres studied the tactical display showing the positions of all known watchers. His military mind immediately began calculating threat assessments and defensive strategies. "They've got us surrounded," he said grimly. "Perfect positioning for either surveillance or attack." Sarah nodded, but something about the positioning bothered her. If they wanted to attack, why wait 50 years? They could have struck at any time when we were less prepared. "Maybe they were waiting for us to develop enough to be worth conquering," Torres suggested. "Or perhaps they needed time to study our capabilities." Their discussion was interrupted by an urgent alarm from the communications center. Lieutenant Parker, the facility's senior radio operator, was receiving a signal on frequencies that should have been impossible to reach from space. "Commander, you need to hear this," Parker called out. "We're getting a transmission on emergency channels, but it's not coming from Earth." Sarah hurried to the communications station. The signal was breaking up badly, filled with static and strange harmonic distortions. But through the interference, she could hear something that made her blood run cold. It was a voice speaking in broken English, with an accent unlike anything she had ever heard. "Earth, humans. Danger coming. 3 fleets. Coalition forces. You must prepare." The signal faded into static, leaving the control room in stunned silence. Sarah looked around at her team, seeing the same mixture of fear and excitement in their eyes that she felt in her own heart. First contact with an alien intelligence, and it was a warning. The wounded scout 3 days later. Radar stations across North America detected an object entering Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. It was small, roughly the size of a fighter jet, but its trajectory and speed were unlike any known aircraft. The object was clearly in distress, its flight pattern erratic as it lost altitude rapidly. Project Sentinel tracked the craft as it crashed into the remote forests of northern Canada. Within hours, a recovery team was dispatched to the crash site. Sarah personally led the mission, knowing that whatever they found could change the course of human history. The alien craft was unlike anything inhuman. Science fiction. Instead of sleek metal surfaces, it appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves and a skin-like exterior that seemed to pulse with faint bioluminescence. The ship had obviously taken severe damage, with several sections torn open, and strange fluids leaking onto the forest floor. Inside the craft, they found its pilot. The being was roughly humanoid in shape, but clearly alien. Skin had a blue-green tint, and its eyes were larger than human eyes, adapted for lower light conditions. It was unconscious but alive, breathing through what appeared to be gill-like slits on its neck. "Careful," Dr. Webb warned as they prepared to move the alien. "We don't know anything about its biology or what kind of medical attention it might need." They transported the wounded being back to Project Sentinel, where a hastily prepared medical bay waited. The facility's doctors worked alongside xenobiology experts to keep the alien alive while learning about its physiology. It was a delicate balance between providing medical care and conducting scientific research. When the alien finally regained consciousness, it spoke in the same broken English they had heard in the radio transmission. Its name was Zaranine, and it had been a scout for something called the Outer Rim Coalition. What it told them changed everything the humans thought they knew about their situation. "Your species watched for many cycles," Zaranine explained, its voice weak but urgent. 3 powers, ... study Earth. Decide what to do with humans." Sarah leaned forward, trying to understand. 3 powers? Are they hostile? "Competition," the alien replied, struggling with the human concept. "Each group wants to claim humans ... for themselves. Some want slaves ... others want soldiers. Third group wants elimination." Dr. Webb asked the question that was on everyone's mind. "How long do we have?" Zaranine's large eyes focused on him with what seemed like sympathy. "Fleet's already moving. Will arrive when your star reaches high point ... what you call summer." Torres did rapid calculations in his head. "It gives us about 4 months to prepare for an invasion by 3 different alien civilizations." Zaranine surprised them with its next statement. "You do not understand. Humans more dangerous than you know. Your weapons ... your defenses. Coalition fears what you might become." The hidden arsenal over the following weeks, as Zaranine recovered from its injuries, the alien scout revealed information that astounded the humans. Earth's seemingly primitive technology was actually far more advanced than the galactic civilizations had expected. The quantum communication systems that Dr. Webb had been developing were superior to anything the aliens possessed. The orbital, a satellite network that most humans thought was for weather monitoring and communications, was actually a sophisticated defense grid. "Your species develops differently," Zero-9 explained during one of their sessions. Most civilizations follow predictable paths. Energy weapons, ... faster ships, ... advanced computers. Humans create chaos solutions, unpredictable technology, weapons that should not work but do. Sarah began to understand why Earth had been watched for so long. The aliens had been waiting to see what humanity would create next, fascinated and frightened by human innovation. Every major technological breakthrough on Earth had been monitored and analyzed by the three coalition powers. Are nuclear weapons? Torres asked. Do they know about those? Zerani made a sound that might have been laughter. Coalition powers abandoned nuclear energy long ago. ... Too dangerous. ... Too unpredictable. Humans still use atomic power. Build weapons with nuclear fire. This terrifies other species. Doctor. Webb pulled up classified files showing Earth's true defensive capabilities. The satellite network could generate electromagnetic pulses that would disable most electronic systems. The orbital platforms that appeared to be communication relays were actually kinetic weapon systems capable of dropping tungsten rods with the force of nuclear weapons. Hidden installations around the globe housed particle beam weapons disguised as radio telescopes. We've been preparing for this invasion for decades without knowing it, Sarah realized. Every defensive system we've built, thinking about earthly threats, will work against alien technology. But Zero-9 warned them that the coming invasion would test human capabilities to their limits. The three coalition fleets combined would bring thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. Each group had different strategies and technologies, making the invasion unpredictable and dangerous. Forthok Empire uses biological weapons, creates plagues, turns captured enemies into slave soldiers, the alien explained. Crystalline Collective fights with pure energy... Their ships are living crystals that can reshape themselves. Shadow Syndicate, masters of deception. You will not see their ships until they strike. Sarah looked around the control room at her team. They were about to face the greatest challenge in human history, but for the first time since learning about the Watchers, she felt confident. Humanity had been underestimated before by earthly enemies, and it had always proven to be a mistake. How do we contact the coalition? She asked Zara-9. The alien's expression seemed puzzled. Contact? You wish to surrender? No, Sarah replied with a smile that would have terrified any human enemy. We want to send them a message. We want them to know that Earth is not defenseless, and that if they come here looking for a fight, they're going to find one. Torres began pulling up tactical displays showing Earth's hidden defenses. Webb started calculating power requirements for the satellite defense grid. Throughout the facility, personnel began preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of humanity in its place in the galaxy. The Watchers had been observing Earth for 50 years, waiting to see what humans would become. They were about to find out that humanity had become something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The age of human isolation was ending, and the galaxy was about to learn why Earth's children had survived and thrived in one of the most hostile environments in the universe. As Sarah watched her team prepare for the coming storm, she couldn't help but smile. The aliens thought they were coming to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they were about to encounter a species that had been fighting for survival since the dawn of time, had never learned how to surrender. Asterisk, the unexpected shield, the gathering. Storm Admiral Kai Nakamura stood on the observation deck of the orbital station Prometheus, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. The planet looked peaceful from this distance, its blue oceans and white clouds hiding the frantic preparations taking place on the surface. As commander of Earth's Space Defense Forces, Nakamura had spent the last 3 months preparing for a battle that most of humanity still knew nothing about. The decision to keep the alien threat secret had been difficult but necessary. Panic would have accomplished nothing except chaos. Instead, Project Sentinel had worked through military channels to quietly activate defense systems that had been dormant for decades. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as communication satellites revealed their true purpose as weapons platforms. Underground bunkers that had been built during the Cold War were reactivated and modernized. Lieutenant Eva Rodriguez worked at her station, monitoring the deep space surveillance network. The young officer had been recruited from NASA's asteroid tracking program, her expertise in orbital mechanics proving invaluable for predicting alien fleet movements. Her screen showed the approaching coalition forces as they moved through the outer solar system, 3 distinct groups maintaining careful distances from each other. "Admiral, we have confirmation," Rodriguez reported. "All 3 fleets have passed the orbit of Neptune. At their current speed, they'll reach Earth in approximately 18 hours. Nakamura nodded grimly. The waiting was almost over. Intelligence from Zera 9 had provided detailed information about each fleet's composition and likely tactics. The Vorthok Empire favored large, heavily armored ships that could withstand significant damage while delivering biological weapons. The Crystalline Collective used vessels that could change shape and size, making them difficult to target. The Shadow Syndicate employed stealth technology that made their ships nearly invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. "Signal all defensive positions," Nakamura ordered. "Begin final preparations, and send a message to Project Sentinel. That Commander Chen that Operation Forgotten Protocol is now active." The Vorthok Empire arrives. The first sign of the invasion came as a darkening of the stars. Hundreds of massive ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, their hulls blocking out the light of distant suns. The Vorthok vessels were ugly things, all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. Each ship was roughly the size of a city, capable of carrying tens of thousands of troops. High Commander Grex stood on the bridge of the flagship Deathbringer, studying the tactical displays showing Earth's orbital infrastructure. The reptilian alien had conquered 17 worlds for the Vorthok Empire, and Earth would be his 18th victory. His scaled skin bore the scars of countless battles, and his eyes held the cold confidence of a predator who had never tasted defeat. "Scan the primitive satellites," Grex ordered his weapons officer. "We will disable their communications first, then land our forces." The weapons officer, a younger Vorthok named Krell, studied his instruments with growing confusion. "Energy readings from their orbital platforms are ... unusual. They're much more powerful than our intelligence suggested." Grex dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. "Humans are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Begin the attack." The Vorthok fleet moved into attack formation, their massive ships approaching Earth's orbital space. With the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey, energy weapons charged, preparing to disable the communication satellites that would leave Earth blind and deaf to coordinate any defense. But when the first energy beams struck the orbital platforms, something unexpected happened. Instead of being destroyed, the satellites absorbed the energy and redirected it back toward the Vorthok ships. The weapons that had been designed to disable primitive technology were useless against human engineering that had been hardened against electromagnetic pulses and energy attacks. "Impossible," Grex roared as his weapons officer reported the failed attack. "Increase power, destroy those satellites." But the harder the Vorthok attacked, the more obvious it became that they had severely underestimated human technology. The orbital platforms that had looked like simple communication devices revealed their true nature as sophisticated defense systems. Point defense lasers emerged from hidden compartments, targeting the Vorthok ships with pinpoint accuracy. Kinetic weapons launched tungsten rods at velocities that could penetrate even the thickest armor. Lieutenant Rodriguez watched her screens as the first phase of Earth's defense began. "All orbital platforms are responding perfectly," she reported to Admiral Nakamura. "The Vorthok fleet is taking heavy damage." Nakamura knew this was only the beginning. The Vorthok were the most straightforward of the 3 attacking fleets, relying on brute force rather than sophisticated tactics. The real challenges were yet to come. The Crystalline Collective surprises the Vorthok fleet struggled with Earth's orbital defenses. The second alien force revealed itself. Collective ships emerged from stealth, their vessels appearing like living jewels against the darkness of space. Each ship was a work of art, its crystalline structure refracting light into beautiful patterns that belied their deadly purpose. Harmony Prime, the collective consciousness that commanded the Crystalline fleet, had been observing the Vorthok attack with interest. the individual crystal beings that made up the collective shared thoughts and perceptions instantaneously, allowing them to coordinate their attacks with perfect precision. The humans' defenses are more sophisticated than predicted. Harmony Prime communicated to its subordinate nodes. Adapt formation. Initiate shape-shifting protocols. The crystalline ships began to change, their structures flowing like liquid. As they adapted to counter Earth's defenses, some vessels split into multiple smaller craft, others merged together into larger formations. The collective's ability to reshape their ships in real time made them nearly impossible to target effectively. Dr. Webb watched the crystalline transformation from Project Sentinel's control room. "Remarkable," he murmured, studying the alien ships through long-range telescopes. "They're not just changing shape, they're fundamentally altering their molecular structure." Commander Chen stood behind him, watching the tactical displays with growing concern. The orbital platforms were having difficulty targeting the constantly shifting crystalline vessels. "Can our weapons adapt to their changes?" "The AI targeting systems are already learning," Webb replied. "But it's going to take time to develop effective countermeasures." The crystalline ships pressed their attack, their weapons firing coherent energy beams that could slice through most materials. But they quickly discovered that human defensive systems had been designed by a species that expected their enemies to adapt and evolve. The orbital platforms began rotating their defensive frequencies, creating energy shields that could deflect the crystalline weapons. More importantly, the human defenders began to understand the crystalline ship's weakness. Despite their ability to change shape, the alien vessels required enormous amounts of energy to maintain their transformations. The longer they fought, the more their efficiency decreased. "Target their power cores," Nakamura ordered from the Prometheus station. "If we can drain their energy, they'll be forced to maintain fixed forms." The Shadow Syndicate's deception. While the Vorthok and Crystalline fleets engaged Earth's orbital defenses, the third alien force remained hidden. The Shadow Syndicate had perfected stealth technology that made their ships nearly impossible to detect. Their vessels drifted through space like ghosts, invisible to human sensors and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Whisper 7. The Syndicate's mission commander observed the battle from his cloaked flagship. The shadow being was a master of deception and misdirection. Having successfully infiltrated and conquered dozens of worlds through subterfuge and surprise attacks, his species had evolved in the darkness between stars, developing natural abilities that made them nearly impossible to detect.
Ow.
Let the others exhaust themselves against the human defenses.
Ow.
Whisper 7 communicated to his fleet through encrypted quantum channels. "When both sides are weakened, we will strike the killing blow." But the Shadow Syndicate had made a critical error in their assessment of human capabilities. While their stealth technology was indeed superior to most galactic civilizations, it had been designed to fool sensors that operated on predictable frequencies and detection methods. Human technology, developed through decades of military paranoia and Cold War innovation, used multiple overlapping detection systems that included some methods the aliens had never encountered. Captain Torres had been monitoring the battle from Project Sentinel's tactical center when he noticed something troubling in the sensor data. "Commander, we're seeing gravitational anomalies in Sector 7. The mass readings don't match the visible ships." Chen looked at the display, her tactical training immediately recognizing the implications. "Cloaked ships. How many?" "At least 200 vessels, possibly more. They're positioned to strike our orbital platforms from behind, while they're engaged with the other fleets." It was a classic pincer movement, and under normal circumstances, it would have been devastatingly effective. But Earth's defenders had prepared for exactly this kind of multi-vector attack. The orbital platforms had been designed with omnidirectional defensive capabilities, and the human command structure had been built to handle simultaneous threats from multiple directions. "Activate the secondary defense grid," Chen ordered, "and prepare to give our hidden guests a very unpleasant surprise." The counterstrike, what happened next, shocked all three alien fleets. The orbital platforms that had been defending against the Vorthok and Crystalline attacks suddenly revealed additional weapon systems. Particle beam cannons emerged from hidden compartments, targeting the cloaked Shadow Syndicate ships with devastating accuracy. The alien stealth technology was useless against weapons that could track gravitational disturbances and heat signatures. Simultaneously, the lunar surface erupted with activity as massive railguns emerged from underground installations. The weapons had been disguised as mining equipment and research facilities, but their true purpose was now revealed. Tungsten. Slugs the size of telephone poles accelerated to incredible velocities, striking the alien ships with the force of nuclear weapons. High Commander Grex watched in horror as his flagship's armor was penetrated by a tungsten rod that punched through his ship from bow to stern. "Retreat," he roared, but it was too late. The human counterattack was swift and merciless. Harmony Prime struggled to maintain coherence as its crystalline ships were systematically destroyed by weapons that seemed to anticipate their every adaptation. The collective consciousness began to fragment as individual crystal beings panicked and broke away from the shared mental network. Whisper 7 felt fear for the first time in his long career as his cloaked ships were revealed and destroyed by human weapons. The Shadow Syndicate's greatest advantage had been neutralized by technology they didn't understand. "Impossible," he whispered as his flagship took direct hits from multiple railgun strikes. "How did they detect us?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Throughout the battle, human radio transmissions had been broadcasting on frequencies that the aliens could monitor. But instead of the panicked communications they expected, the aliens heard something that chilled them to their cores. "This is Admiral Nakamura to all alien fleets," the transmission began. "You have entered Earth's defensive perimeter with hostile intent. You have attacked our orbital installations and threatened our planet. This is your only warning. Retreat immediately, or face the full response of Earth's defense forces." The transmission continued with tactical data that should have been impossible for the humans to possess. Nakamura was providing detailed information about each fleet's composition, weapon systems, and tactical weaknesses. Somehow, the primitive humans had not only detected the Shadow Syndicate's cloaked ships, but had also analyzed all three fleets' capabilities. "We know about your biological weapons, Vorthok Empire," Nakamura continued. "We know about your shape-shifting technology, Crystalline Collective, and we know about your stealth systems, Shadow Syndicate. We have been watching you just as you have been watching us." The revelation hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. The humans had somehow turned the surveillance around using the very monitoring systems that had been watching Earth 2 study their observers. The prey had become the predator. The retreat as the human counterattack intensified, the three alien fleets found themselves in an impossible situation. Their carefully planned invasion had turned into a disaster. Ships that had been designed to conquer primitive worlds were being systematically destroyed by weapons that seemed to violate everything they knew about technological development. The Vorthok fleet, which had lost nearly a third of its ships to the orbital defense platforms, was the first to break. High Commander Grex, his flagship crippled and his invasion force shattered, gave the order to retreat. The massive alien ships began withdrawing toward the edge of the solar system, their proud formations now scattered and broken. The Crystalline Collective followed soon after, their perfect coordination shattered by the loss of so many individual crystal beings. Harmony Prime struggled to maintain even basic communication with its remaining ships as they fled toward the outer planets, the Shadow Syndicate, their stealth advantage gone, and their ships revealed and vulnerable, had no choice but to abandon their hidden positions and retreat openly. Whisper 7 watched his defeat with the bitter knowledge that his species' greatest military secrets had been rendered useless by human ingenuity. As the alien fleets withdrew, Admiral Nakamura stood on the bridge of Prometheus and looked out at the debris field that had once been 3 invasion fleets. Earth's orbital space was littered with the wreckage of alien ships. But the human defensive platforms remained intact and operational. "Casualties?" he asked Lieutenant Rodriguez. "Minimal, sir. We lost 2 orbital platforms and sustained damage. 3 others. No fatalities reported." Nakamura nodded, but he knew the victory was only temporary. The 3 alien coalitions would regroup and return with better intelligence and more sophisticated tactics. But they would also return with the knowledge that Earth was not the primitive world they had expected to conquer. Commander Chen's voice came through the communication system from Project Sentinel.
Admiral?
We're receiving multiple transmission requests from the retreating fleets. They want to negotiate. Nakamura smiled grimly. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to dictate terms to a defeated enemy. Instead, they were discovering that humanity was ready to negotiate as equals. The age of human isolation was ending, but it was ending on humanity's terms. Put them through, Nakamura ordered. Let's see what they have to say. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth's children had inherited more than just a beautiful blue world. They had inherited the determination to survive and the ingenuity to turn any challenge into an opportunity. The Forgotten Protocol had been activated, and the universe would never be the same. The new Galactic Order, the Broken Fleets, 3 months after the failed invasion of Earth. The remnants of the once mighty coalition fleets limped through space toward their respective home territories. The proud armadas that had approached Earth with such confidence were now scattered groups of damaged ships, their crews demoralized and their commanders facing difficult questions from their governments. High Commander. Grek sat in his damaged command chamber aboard the crippled Deathbringer, staring at reports that still seemed impossible to believe. The Vorthok Empire had lost over 200 ships in the attack on Earth, including some of their most advanced battlecruisers. Thousands of trained warriors were dead, and the survivors carried wounds that would take years to heal. The worst part was not the military defeat, but the complete failure of intelligence. For 50 years, the Empire's scouts had reported that humans were a primitive species with limited technology and no significant military capabilities. The reality had been devastatingly different. Earth's defenders had fought with weapons and tactics that the Vorthok had never encountered, turning what should have been an easy conquest into a military disaster. Commander, his aide approached cautiously. We are receiving communications from the Crystalline Collective and the Shadow Syndicate. They wish to coordinate a response to the human threat. Grex's scarred face twisted into an expression of bitter amusement. Coordinate? After what happened at Earth? The humans made fools of all 3 of our civilizations. What makes you think we can do better working together? But even as he spoke, Grex knew that cooperation might be their only hope. The humans had demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything in the known galaxy. Their weapons technology was innovative and unpredictable. Their defensive systems were far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. And their tactical thinking was unlike anything the traditional galactic powers had encountered. The Council of Defeat, 2 weeks later, representatives from the 3 defeated civilizations met at a neutral space station in the Kepler Nebula. The meeting was unprecedented, as the Vorthok Empire, Crystalline Collective, and Shadow Syndicate had been rivals for centuries. Only the shock of their mutual defeat by a previously unknown species had brought them together. Harmony Prime manifested through a crystalline communication array, its voice carrying the harmonics of 1,000 individual crystal beings. The collective consciousness was still fragmented from the losses at Earth, struggling to maintain coherence after so many of its components had been destroyed. Did the human weapons disrupted our molecular cohesion in ways we did not anticipate? Harmony Prime reported to the Assembly. Their technology appears to be specifically designed to counter our adaptive capabilities. This suggests long-term observation and study of our methods. Whisper 7 emerged from the shadows at the edge of the meeting chamber, his form barely visible even when he chose to reveal himself. The Shadow Syndicate commander's voice carried a note of grudging respect mixed with deep concern. The humans detected our stealth systems through methods we still do not understand, he admitted. Our intelligence networks suggest they have been developing countermeasures to galactic standard technology for decades. They were not caught unprepared. They were waiting for us. Commander Grek slammed his clawed fist on the conference table, his frustration evident. How did we miss this? Our scouts have been monitoring Earth for half a century. How did they fail to detect such advanced military preparations? The answer came from an unexpected source. A new voice joined the conference through encrypted channels, speaking in perfectly fluent Galactic standard with only a slight human accent, because you were looking for the wrong things. Commander Sarah Chen said, her image appearing on the main display screen. You were expecting us to develop according to your technological patterns. You never considered that we might take a completely different approach. The alien commanders stared at the human image in shock. Chen appeared calm and confident, sitting in what looked like a military command center. Behind her, they could see displays showing the current positions of all three alien fleets. You're monitoring this transmission, Whisper 7 observed, his voice carrying a note of professional appreciation. Impressive. We've been monitoring your communications for months, Chen replied matter-of-factly. Your quantum encryption is sophisticated, but it has weaknesses. Human computer scientists have been studying your technology through the surveillance equipment you left in our solar system. The human revelation what followed was perhaps the most shocking intelligence briefing in galactic history. Commander Chen, with assistance from Dr. Webb and other Project Sentinel personnel, revealed the true extent of human military preparation and technological development. You assumed we were primitive because we still used chemical rockets and nuclear weapons, Chen explained. What you failed to understand is that we kept using these technologies because they work, not because we couldn't develop alternatives. Human engineering philosophy is based on reliability and effectiveness, not elegance. The display showed detailed schematics of Earth's defense systems. The orbital platforms that had seemed like simple communication satellites were revealed to be sophisticated weapons platforms with multiple backup systems and redundant power sources. The lunar installations that had appeared to be mining operations were actually massive rail gun emplacements capable of launching projectiles across the entire solar system. Your species developed technology in predictable patterns, Dr. Webb added, joining the transmission. Energy weapons, faster than light travel, advanced materials. Humans took a different path. We focused on kinetic weapons, electromagnetic systems, and what you might call brute force solutions. Our technology looks primitive because we designed it to be underestimated. The alien commanders studied the human schematics with growing alarm. The railguns that had devastated their fleets were based on principles that most galactic civilizations had abandoned millennia ago. But human engineers had refined and perfected these primitive technologies to a degree that made them more effective than the most advanced energy weapons. The tungsten projectiles that destroyed your ships were traveling at 20% of light speed, Chen continued. At those velocities, mass becomes the most destructive force in the universe. Your energy shields and adaptive armor were designed to counter energy weapons and exotic materials. They were useless against simple kinetic force.
How many preems?
Voice carried overtones of confusion and respect. But the computational requirements for such precision, targeting across interplanetary distances, should be impossible with your level of technology. That's where you made your biggest mistake, Chen smiled.
Ow.
You underestimated human creativity. Our computers aren't more powerful than yours, but they're programmed differently. We use distributed processing, quantum uncertainty principles, and what we call chaos mathematics. Our targeting systems don't calculate precise trajectories. They calculate probability clouds and then fire enough projectiles to ensure hits. The new balances, the full scope of human military capabilities, became clear. The three alien civilizations faced a troubling reality. Earth was not just another world to be conquered or controlled. It was a new military power that could potentially challenge the established order of the galaxy. But Commander Chen had not contacted them simply to demonstrate human superiority. She had a proposition that would change everything. The galaxy is bigger than Earth, she said, her tone becoming more diplomatic. There's room for all our civilizations to coexist and prosper, but that will require some changes in how things have been done. She outlined a new framework for galactic relations, one based on mutual respect rather than the traditional hierarchy of powerful civilizations dominating weaker ones. Earth would recognize the territorial claims of the three coalitions, but, in return, humanity would have the right to establish colonies in unclaimed systems and to trade freely throughout galactic space. You came to Earth expecting to find slaves or subjects, Chen continued. Instead, you found equals. The question now is whether you're wise enough to accept that reality and work with us, or foolish enough to continue fighting a war you cannot win. High Commander Grex was the first to respond, his military mind quickly grasping the strategic implications. And if we refuse your terms, then you'll discover what happens when humans stop being defensive and start being aggressive, Chen replied, her voice carrying a note of steel that made even the battle-hardened Vorthok commander uncomfortable. The weapons you encountered at Earth were our defensive systems. You really don't want to see what we've built for offense. The human fleet, as if to emphasize her point, new contacts appeared on the alien sensors. Human ships emerged from stealth positions throughout the star system, revealing themselves through the same gravitational detection methods they had used to uncover the Shadow Syndicate's vessels. The human fleet was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Instead of the sleek, elegant designs favored by most galactic civilizations, the human ships looked like floating fortresses. Their hulls were angular and heavily armored, covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays that gave them a distinctly predatory appearance. Admiral Nakamura's voice joined the transmission from the flagship of the human fleet. "We call this Operation Shepherd," he announced. 12 battle groups positioned throughout this region of space. Each group is equipped with weapons and defenses based on what we learned from studying your technology during the invasion. The lead human ship, designated as Earth Defense Vessel Retribution, was massive, even by galactic standards. Its hull stretched over 3 kilometers in length, bristling with railguns, missile launchers, and energy weapons that had been reverse-engineered from captured alien technology. "We've been busy these past 3 months," Nakamura continued. "Human industrial capacity is quite impressive when properly motivated. We can build ships faster than you can replace the ones we destroy." Lieutenant Rodriguez, now promoted to captain, commanded one of the newer human vessels. Her ship, the Discovery, was designed specifically for deep space operations and carried exploration equipment alongside its formidable weapons. The vessel represented humanity's intention to expand beyond Earth's solar system regardless of alien opposition. The negotiations faced with the reality of human military power and the prospect of a prolonged war they could not win. The 3 alien coalitions agreed to negotiate. The talks took place on Haven Station, a neutral facility that had been hastily constructed in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The negotiations were unlike anything in galactic diplomatic history. Traditional galactic diplomacy was based on careful protocols developed over thousands of years, with complex hierarchies and elaborate ceremonies. Human diplomacy was direct, practical, and focused on results rather than ceremony. Ambassador Foster, who had been chosen to lead the human delegation, brought a team that included military advisors, trade experts, and xenobiologists. But she also brought something that shocked the alien delegates: Zeranine, the alien scout who had crashed on Earth months earlier. "Zeranine has chosen to remain on Earth as our first alien citizen," Foster announced. "They will serve as a cultural advisor and help us understand galactic customs and traditions."
Wow.
The presence of a defector from the galactic community sent a clear message. Humans were not just military conquerors. They were capable of inspiring loyalty and cooperation from other species. This represented a fundamental threat to the traditional power structures that had governed the galaxy for millennia. The negotiations resulted in the Treaty of Sol, a document that established Earth as an independent galactic power with full rights to expansion and colonization. In return, humans agreed to respect existing territorial boundaries and to follow established protocols for first contact with new species. But the most significant aspect of the treaty was its establishment of the Galactic Council, a new governing body that included representatives from all major civilizations. For the first time in galactic history, decisions would be made through democratic discussion rather than the dominance of the strongest powers. The new frontier, 6 months after the Treaty of Sol was signed, the first human colony ships departed Earth for distant star systems. The vessels were escorted by the new human fleet, their hulls gleaming with fresh paint, and their crews eager to explore the galaxy that had once seemed so far away. Captain Torres, now promoted to Admiral, commanded the Colonial Protection Force. From his flagship, the Endeavor, His mission was to ensure the safety of human colonists and to establish friendly relations with any alien species they encountered. Remember, Torres addressed his fleet commanders during their final briefing. "We're not conquerors. We're explorers and settlers. But we're also the inheritors of a world that taught us to defend ourselves. Anyone who mistakes human friendliness for weakness will quickly learn otherwise." The first human colony was established in the Kepler 452 system on a world that Earth's scientists had been studying through telescopes for decades. The planet, officially designated as New Terra, offered Earth-like conditions and abundant resources for the 10,000 colonists who would make it their new home. Dr. Webb, now serving as the colony's chief science officer, stood on the surface of New Terra and looked up at an alien sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. The red dwarf star that warmed the planet cast everything in a slightly orange light. But the sight of the first human city rising from the alien landscape filled him with wonder. "The galaxy is so much larger than we ever imagined," he radioed. "Back to Earth, and we're just getting started." The Legacy back on Earth, Commander Chen stood in the same control room where she had first learned about the alien watchers. The screens that had once shown defensive positions now displayed the locations of human colonies, trade routes, and exploration missions throughout the local galactic region. The transformation had been remarkable. Less than a year, humanity had gone from an isolated species to one of the major powers in the galaxy. Human technology was being studied and adapted by alien civilizations. Human colonists were establishing settlements on dozens of worlds, and human ideas about democracy and cooperation were spreading throughout galactic society. But Chen knew that the real victory was not military or political. It was the proof that humanity could adapt and thrive in any environment, no matter how challenging or unexpected. The aliens thought they were watching primitive savages, she reflected. Speaking to Zaranine, who had become her close friend and advisor, they never realized they were watching the most dangerous species in the galaxy, learning how to reach for the stars. Zaranine's large eyes reflected the starlight streaming through the observation windows. "Dangerous, yes," the alien agreed in much improved English, "but also hopeful. Humans do not just survive, they make others want to survive with them. The galaxy would never be the same." The age of human expansion had begun not with conquest, but with the simple declaration that Earth's children would not be ignored, would not be conquered, and would not be denied their rightful place among the stars. As Chen watched the display showing human ships moving between distant stars, she smiled at the thought of what those early alien watchers would think if they could see the galaxy now. They had come expecting to find prey and had instead discovered predators. But more than that, they had discovered a species that could turn enemies into allies, transform conflict into cooperation, and build bridges across the vast distances between worlds. The Forgotten Protocol had been more than a defense plan. It had been humanity's declaration that the species that had crawled out of the caves of ancient Earth was ready to take its place as shepherds of the galaxy, protectors of the weak and champions of the impossible dream that all sentient beings could learn to live together among the infinite stars. The Watchers had been watching for 50 years, but they had failed to understand what they were truly observing. They had seen humans building weapons and preparing for war, but they had missed the most important thing of all. They had been watching a species that refused to give up, refused to surrender, and refused to accept that anything in the universe was beyond their reach. Earth's first Star Destroyer had indeed been a warning, but not the kind the aliens had expected. It was a warning that humanity had awakened, had learned to dream of distant suns, and would never again be content to remain in the shadows while others shaped the galaxy's destiny. The stars belonged to everyone now, and humanity would make sure it stayed that way.